Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the first episode in which Uzumaki Naruto and his team time travel to the past. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to the author's profile. If you have their profile, DM me on Discord. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. How can I say this? Hatake Kakashi paused for a moment to take in the three new academy graduates before him. Haruno Sakura, the class's top kunoichi and the one he'd expected to have the most tact of the three, was sitting in the first row with her head leaning against one hand, lightly snoozing if the minute rise and fall of her shoulders was anything to go by. Directly next to her was Uchiha Sasuke, the top student of the year overall. As if he were trying to outdo the girl beside him, he was currently sitting with his legs crossed over the desk top, head back and clearly asleep. The dead last, however? Naruto was snoring loudly on his back, fully spread out on the remainder of the open desk. Was I really that late? Naruto Uzumaki was, without a doubt, an idiot. At least that's what everyone in the village thought. There was barely a soul who didn't know of the pain in the ass in some capacity, and their dislike of him was reflected across an equally large statistic. How could they not dislike him when he constantly pulled pranks and caused more mayhem than most village attacks during wartime? When he harbored the greatest demon on the face of the planet within his being? If he could honestly walk down the street like he was doing just then, oblivious to the heavy glares that were leveled at him from all directions? The boy was simply contemptible. However, if anyone could listen to the boy's thoughts at that moment, they would probably reconsider their opinion of him. Did I seriously go back in time? Yes, they'd have to add crazy to the list. See, the issue that Naruto was having was that he'd woken up in his old apartment that morning, and not where he remembered passing out earlier. Also, he'd been a lot older at the time. Understandably, he'd freaked out for a bit once confirming that it wasn't one big genjutsu, double-checked that he still had little Uzumaki, then made a clone and slapped himself twice. Now though he was just taking a walk and rolling with it. This is so bizarre. Naruto cast his gaze about the market street. He recognized the shops and people easily, but it was a surreal experience. Like he was strolling through a dream. The village had changed over the years after all, particularly considering the times it had been nearly leveled to the ground. People he'd seen long dead now walked the streets without a care to their grim futures. And those looks. Disgust, loathing, even fear. No matter where he turned he was met with ice. I almost forgot how much everyone used to hate me. Almost. Oh, hey there Naruto. The usual? It took him a second to realize where he was. His feet had taken him to his favorite ramen stand automatically. Iam's cheerful face smiled at him from just beneath the cloth hanging over the awning. Now there was a timeless experience that warmed him like a ray of purest sunshine. No money ne-chan, he said with a rueful grin. A common occurrence, really. Especially with no kind of mission pay to help out yet. His monthly stipend only went so far after all. Next time then, she replied, shrugging. I'll make Dad give you a free bowl. Where is he? Naruto asked, curious. It wasn't often the old man left his stall. Just getting some stuff we're low on. The lunch rush will be starting soon. Two men entered the booth, sitting on the stools. Talk to you later. Waving at the already distracted girl, Naruto tensed his legs, seeming to vanish on the spot to any civilian that had been watching him. He similarly appeared on a nearby roof, wincing. Ow! He fell back into his behind, rubbing his ankles. Had he broken them? Surely they weren't just sore. Definitely a kid body, he grumbled, resigning himself to sitting there until they healed. He'd need to lay off his body until he knew he wouldn't break it to pieces. At least with Kurama it wouldn't take that long. Though thinking of. Naruto closed his eyes, lying back against the warm tiled roof. Within seconds he was in the sewer-like representation of the seal space. What a mess, Naruto sighed, shin deep in water. The mass of tiny pipes that ran along the ceiling dripped at various places, unlike the far larger ones that he knew were completely empty. Kurama. There was no answer. Not that he'd expected one. Let's see. Left, left, right, left? Naruto wondered aloud, the only other sounds coming from his legs cutting through the water. As with being through the village, it had been just as long since he'd wandered through his sewer-themed headspace. Not like it mattered which way he went. Every path led to the same place, even the ones that technically should have him going endlessly in circles. Brat. There you are, said Naruto cheerily, finally emerging into the cavernous room that housed the fox. He remembered how often he'd find the fox laying down in boredom, a massive solitary eye being the only indication that he was even paying attention to the blonde. This time, however. How do you know that name? The Kyuubi was on his feet, towering over him with probably the most intimidating glare he'd ever felt from the sentient mass of chakra. That being said, the positively mind-numbing paralysis anyone likely would have felt as their body shut down in terror simply washed over the blonde like a gentle breeze, the stupidly cheerful grin he was returning completely unaffected. You told me, fuzz brain. I did not, was the furious response. The water surged outwards with the intensity of the roar. Naruto just rolled his eyes, walking past the seal paper and unconcernedly stepping through the wide bars of the cage. Within moments he'd been pinned to the ground with a massive hand. The water easily closed over his head, cutting off his air. Of course this was putting aside the crushing pressure he was receiving to his entire body. Seconds later he was lifted out of the water, high above the ground, now at eye level with the fox. The interesting thing was that he was completely dry. A weird effect for an equally weird space. You sealed your fate the moment you entered my cage, the Kyuubi told him, teeth displayed in a terrifyingly wide grin that easily took up his entire field of vision. Any last requests before I consume your pitiable mind and take control of your body? People you'd like me to spare when I reduce this hive of human waste to dust? The look on his face promised anything but mercy. Naruto spit out a mouthful of water. Do I really not seem any different to you than usual? Irrelevant. Your face is irrelevant. The Kyuubi stared at him in silence for a moment before speaking once more. Where did you learn that name? I said it already, you told me, Naruto said patiently, picking at his ear with the hand he'd managed to wiggle free. The Kyuubi growled but nothing further. How? At this Naruto gave him a puzzled look. Years from now. I think I went back in time. Like my mind did but not my body. Definitely not dreaming, already checked. Not a genjutsu either. And you're here, which pretty much rules everything else out anyway. Don't know what I'd do if you weren't, to be honest. Or if I were a girl. He shuddered at the thought. It was clear the Kyuubi had been caught off guard. Whatever he'd been expecting the boy to say, it certainly wasn't that. Do you take me for a fool, brat? Naruto shook his head, taken aback. No way, you're the smartest guy I know. I mean. He couldn't help but send a grin at the fox despite the way its hand increased the pressure on him. You're like, way older than GG. You know a ton of stuff. Time travel is a fairy tale, the Kyuubi growled. At this Naruto's expression became a bit stubborn. I still think it happened. Then prove it. If me knowing your name isn't good enough, then what can I say? The Kyuubi just held his glare, unaffected by the boy's words. Figure it out. For the first time, Naruto returned the glare with one of his own. Fine. Let me go and I will. The two stared in silence, the Kyuubi, eyes unreadable, Naruto, expression blank. They stayed like this for a minute before. Humph. With a grunt, the grip on Naruto's body slackened, allowing him to drop the considerable distance back to the ground. He landed easily on the top of the water, barely a ripple indicating anything had happened. Ouch, the ankles, Naruto whined, falling with a small splash onto his backside while he rubbed them. The Kyuubi merely let out a short breath, making Naruto's clothes flap. I'm waiting, brat. The boy frowned as he shot the fox a calculating look. Over the course of your life as the Kyuubi, you've intentionally saved the lives of 7 humans. Naruto paused, his expression curving into a small grin as he now leaned back on his hands. All young kids. For the first time the Kyuubi looked away, as if the sheer ridiculousness of what the boy had said was beyond even acknowledging. What nonsense. You've hated humanity for a really long time, but I know a tiny part of you still likes them as well. Just the way your father raised you, Naruto added, more as an afterthought than anything. Really, tiny part. It was with a thundering crash of displaced water that the Kyuubi dropped into a relaxed resting position, making Naruto cry out in alarm as a wave of water engulfed him momentarily, the force pushing him back out of the cage. Get out of here, brat. You've used up my patience for the day. Okay, I'll visit later then, Naruto replied easily, getting back to his feet. Though before I go. Under the peripheral gaze of the Kyuubi, Naruto put out his right hand, palm upwards, eyes closed in concentration. A few seconds later his fingertips lit up with a violet-colored chakra, like each was aflame. Try not to make me go crazy, he said lightly, looking up through the bars. It would probably cause a huge problem. And with that, he jabbed his fingertips into his gut, directly over the center of the seal. XXX Naruto awoke with a start, sitting up rapidly. The sun was still high overhead, moments of time had passed overall. Still, only the barest minimum of his awareness was on his surroundings. He was putting everything he had into suppressing the enormous influx of Kurama's chakra into his system, painfully widening his chakra pathways bit by bit all the while. The last thing he needed was anyone sensing the fox even for a second. Truthfully, he wasn't exactly too sure what to expect apart from a certain amount of, well, discomfort. When Jiraiya did this to him before, he'd ended up blacking out and apparently almost killing his off-guard sensei in a four-tailed rage. Really, the risks he took for his village. 5, 10, 20 minutes passed. Slowly the surge receded back to normal where he felt nothing but his own chakra circulating his system, though there was no doubt whatever fine control he'd managed to retain had gone right out the window. It was nearly an hour later that he finally stood, stretching with a huge yawn. He was also pleased to note that his ankles were entirely healed. Swell of him to hold off like that, Naruto said to himself, well aware that the fox knew he'd said it. Considering everything that had happened, and that he had absolutely no idea how to go back to his original time, loosening the seal was the best step he could possibly take to fast-track his recovery to the level he should be at. Abusing shadow clones would assist with anything that may have slipped, but there was no getting around his weakened and younger body. Easier access to Kurama's vast chakra and healing would allow him to tear his body apart and recover incredibly quickly. Really, it was just unfair the kind of advantage he had. It was too bad the other half of Kurama was locked behind the Shinigami's death seal. After everything he'd been through, not having that piece made him feel like he was missing something. Then again, it wasn't like he needed to be one of the strongest shinobi in the world anytime soon. No need to rush things along if it wasn't necessary. Besides, being a kid again was an opportunity in itself, especially given, Naruto suddenly looked to his right as a shinobi landed on the roof as well. Even with the badger mask, he could tell the person was giving him a blank expression. Shouldn't you be at school? School? Naruto. I forgot I still went to school, okay, the blonde shouted back, clearly frustrated. Just graduate me already, this place sucks. If you didn't suck then you would have graduated years ago. Not cool, Arika-sensei. Ha ha ha. What a moron. Say that to my face, Band-Aid. Band-Aid? Naruto, you retard. What kind of idiot forgets something like that? You aren't helping, Kiba. Come on. It's not my fault he's developmental. How'd you manage that big word with a tiny dog brain? Hey, don't insult dogs. Then stop barking like one. You wanna fight, Orange Slice? Bring it on, Meow Mix. Outside. Sasuke rolled his eyes as the two boys argued with Irika, insulting each other with every other word as they were both dragged and summarily tossed into the hall by the backs of their shirts. They'd be buds after standing outside for 10 minutes regardless, the two were that similar. It was also just like Naruto to show up to class halfway through the day only to get himself out in the hallway seconds later. Turning his head away from the commotion, he returned to doing what he'd been occupying himself with for the majority of the class, looking out the window. It was a nice day outside and he was looking forward to class ending. Considering that he'd spent so many years in different regions, it was nice to have mild weather once again. Besides, without the obsession of finding and killing his brother, he found he had more time to do whatever in general. A lot more time. Killing your brother once already kind of did that. Actually, what was he going to do when they finally met? Get dango? Now, as I was saying before we were interrupted. Sasuke turned his head back to his returned sensei automatically. Old habits die hard. With your graduation test only a week away, I wanted to remind you once again that although we aren't doing anything new, it is on you to practice your skills. The academy training ground is always open to you after class, so if you don't have another place you prefer, I suggest you use it. The academy library is also there if you need it. Any questions before we continue our review? There were a few, all of which Sasuke tuned out in favor of looking at his classmates. They would all become quite strong given some time, though certainly not to the level of himself and his old teammates. Speaking of old teammates though. Sakura was asleep. There was no second way about it. She looked awake enough, leaning on her hand, bangs just shrouding her eyes, but he could tell she was resting. All things considered, she looked exhausted. Bizarre, really, he couldn't remember a day where the girl wasn't as attentive as could be in class. Or tired for that matter, at least before team training. Then again, against all logic, it truly did seem as though he'd been thrown back in time. Who could truly say that he was even in his own original timeline? For all he knew, Sakura actually did do some kind of serious training and Hinata was some kind of super, extroverted maniac. He paused for a moment before sneaking a quick look at the Hyuga. She was still watching the door Naruto had been tossed through with a hidden fond expression, touching her pointer fingers together like she usually did when she was being shy. Thank Kami for that. It wasn't long before the bell rang, signifying the end of the school day. Naruto ran off with Kiba, likely to do something stupid, and Sakura had also left immediately, which put him at the center of a group of girls asking him to spend time with them. Now there was something he still hadn't readjusted to. Well, he said to himself, performing a quick substitution with a log outside the nearby open window, much to the girls' disappointment, this is a bit of a problem. How am I supposed to get my Manjikyu Sharingan back? Can I even get a Rinnegan again? Ugh, I'm so weak. And he sulked off, the picture of misery. Sweetie, are you sure everything is okay? It's fine, Mom, can I have more rice? Oh, of course. Sakura happily accepted her fourth bowl of rice, eating with a vigor worthy of her knucklehead classmate with the ramen obsession. Her mother had, quite expectedly, been rather concerned with the radical change in her eating habits. Going from hard dieting to what looked closer to binge eating was probably more than a little alarming. Her father, however. Ha ha ha. That's my girl. Finally found her father's appetite, didn't she? Dad, stop, I'll get fat if I eat like you, Sakura said with a smile. And they laughed, her mother just shaking her head at their nonsense. Of course, what her parents didn't know was that she was using an absurdly advanced medical technique to help stimulate her body growth and muscle development, something that required her to eat an obscene amount of food for the energy it took. Not as explosively potent as any Amakichi technique, but far more holistic and 100% more permanent. It would take a while before she was anywhere near the strength she used to have, but she'd only have to suffer through it at this extreme for a week or so longer. At least when she was done she wouldn't feel like she was dying of starvation anymore. How had she ever had the energy to do anything before? Oh wait, she hadn't. Useless fangirl. Actually, what was she doing insulting her past self? She ended up becoming arguably one of the strongest ninja in the world before she turned 20. People wished they had a success story like she did. This time though she was shamelessly cheating. I'm really looking forward to graduation, she said suddenly, pausing between bites for some water. Being on a team should be fun and I'll be able to help make the village a better place like you guys do. Her mother beamed at her while her father finished his drink with a satisfied exhale. You'll be a fantastic kunoichi, he said with the utmost faith. You've got your mother's mind and your father's spirit. Whoever's on your team will be lucky to have you. Sakura just grinned. The revenge-obsessed survivor of a slaughtered clan and a downtrodden, desperate Jinchuriki with delusions of grandeur. They sure will. Couldn't you have just thrown a shuriken or something? Naruto grumbled, his orange jumpsuit hanging on a nearby branch of one of the many trees that grew directly out of the roof. He was sitting there in a white shirt and his noodle-patterned boxers. Irika-sensei is going to blame me for the room being all wet and the empty pond by the window. Besides, that thing takes forever to get dry and it's heavy. Don't know why you wear it then, Sasuke said honestly, though he was still putting most of his focus into fixing his hair back to how it had been earlier. Hey, it's good clothing. Don't hate on the orange, Naruto argued indignantly, though he kept the heat out of his voice. It was a sensible statement after all. Of course, if something like wet clothing was enough to slow him down he'd be a failure of a shinobi in general. You okay over there, Sakura-chan? I'm fine, Naruto. Sakura was just sitting with her knees to her chest, body angled away from the boys. Everyone can see straight through my shirt, why wouldn't I be fine? Ah, sorry, he said quickly at her blunt sarcasm, turning away from her with a light blush. Sasuke just rolled his eyes at the exchange, taking a moment to squeeze any extra water out of the bottom of his shirt. Naruto wasn't kidding about the empty pond. You're not what I expected, Kakashi admitted freely, looking between the three of them with his single eye. What were you expecting, sensei? Asked Sakura, curiosity peeking through her annoyance. Honestly? Kakashi took a second before pointing to her. A dieting, love-struck girl who doesn't actually know the first thing about being a shinobi. He pointed to Sasuke. A broody avenger with an extreme ego problem. He pointed to Naruto. A weak idiot who's somehow convinced himself he can prank his way to becoming Hokage. The three exchanged silent looks before turning back to their new sensei, now sheepish. Ah, yeah, I can see that. Makes sense. Could be worse, I guess. Kakashi just gave them all a blank look. Well, in that case, why don't you tell everyone a bit about yourselves? Name, age, strengths, likes and dislikes, and any dreams you might have. Keep it short. How about you go first, he added, motioning to Sasuke who just shrugged. I'm Sasuke Uchiha, 12 years old. I'm a close-range fighter, though I can use thrown weapons well. I like tomatoes and dislike being surrounded by airheads. My dreams. He paused while the others looked at him expectantly. Well, I'd really like to travel the world. Before it's wrecked by war, he silently added. Oh. Naruto had jumped to his feet, the picture of excitement. Yes, traveling, he agreed wholeheartedly. Where do you want to go? Tea country. Sakura exclaimed, hand raised high, though the other was still over her chest protectively. Oh, and waterfall. I've heard it's beautiful there. Doesn't matter where, just want to travel, Sasuke replied. Yeah, make sure to take us on lots of missions out of the village, Kakashi-sensei, said Naruto. I'll keep that in mind, the man said dryly. You next. Naruto Uzumaki, 12 years old, he said brightly. Close to mid-range fighter, and I'm pretty good with stealth and traps. I like ramen and hate having no money to get some when I'm hungry. My goal is to become friends with a ton of people from all over the world. He paused for a second before adding, here too. Sasuke gave a small snort of amusement which masked his surprise. Not Hokage? What's wrong with wanting to make a lot of friends? Naruto demanded, giving the boy a cross look. Nothing, said Sasuke with a shrug, leaning back on his elbows. He mentally smirked at the surprised look Naruto was giving him. It works out anyway because we're going to be traveling a lot. Just don't embarrass us. Why don't we just finish the introductions, said Kakashi, cutting off whatever Naruto had been planning on saying back. The sole girl of the group sat up a bit straighter at this, addressing them all. Of course. I'm Sakura Haruno, 12 years old. I'm a close-range fighter. I like flowers and dislike people with poor hygiene. I would really like to. She broke off, looking between the three of them. What? Close-ranged fighter? Surprisingly it was Naruto who'd said it, though the other two were definitely thinking it. Sakura just blushed. I've been training a lot lately and I think I do best close up, she said hotly. If you knew how good I was you'd snap. She mentally shouted. Awesome! Naruto said excitedly. I can't wait to see you in action, Sakura-chan. Your dreams, Sakura? Kakashi asked. I want the people I care about to be proud of me and to be useful to my team. An admirable goal, Kakashi said kindly. He could surely relate to something like that, especially given what he'd been expecting her to say. How interesting. At any rate, I am Kakashi Hatake, Jonin-sensei assigned to Team 7. I am skilled in all aspects of being a shinobi. I like reading and dislike wasting my time. Maybe if we become a team I'll share my dreams with you three. Oh, hang on, Naruto was on his feet. What do you mean if we become a team? We are a team, sensei. Were you late to that meeting too? Kakashi chuckled, smiling at them with his one visible eye. Oh, I forgot to mention, all the academy graduates are given a final test by their Jonin-sensei to see if they will become actual genin. Most fail, to be honest. Go back to the academy or get put with the reserves. Some drop out altogether and stay civilians. Quite sad. So we aren't actual genin yet? Sakura asked, surprised. Privately the girl was highly pleased at how perfectly she delivered the line. Nope. They all spared a moment to watch Naruto fume over wasted years in a classroom before returning to the task at hand. Sasuke simply let out a huff. Fine, when is the test? Now? Tomorrow morning at 8, training ground 3. Come geared to fight. You'll want to skip breakfast as well, Kakashi added, getting to his feet at last. You'll puke otherwise. And with that he vanished in a swirl of leaves. Silence fell on the trio for a few seconds before it was broken. Ah, Sakura-chan, can I talk with you for a second? The girl looked over at a somewhat nervous Naruto in surprise but nodded all the same. She knew what he was going to ask her anyway. I'm heading home then, said Sasuke, getting to his feet. Make sure you eat tomorrow, even though he said don't. It's obviously misdirection. Receiving surprised nods from his teammates he turned back to the rooftop door, heading for the stairs. Naruto waited until he was gone before speaking. Sakura-chan, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry for the way I've been bothering you this past year, asking you out all the time. Sakura, who had already been halfway to gently rejecting that very thing, froze mid-motion. What? Where did that come from? Naruto looked off to the side, not willing to fully meet her eyes. I got to talk to someone recently about how to get close with people and he said I've been doing it wrong, asking you out the way I have been. I really just want us to be friends. Oh. Well, what else was there to say? She'd been wondering how to go about making peace between them and he'd actually come to it himself, albeit with some guidance. She couldn't help but wonder who talked to him, considering how few adults there were in the entire village that actually wanted to help him. Especially now in his life. Well then in that case, I'm sorry about how I've been treating you too. You didn't really deserve any of it and I've been pretty mean to you. I guess I was just trying to get attention from the wrong people, she added softly in reflection. But Naruto was shaking his head, now beaming at her. No way, Sakura-chan, water under the bridge. Friends? He held out his hand, palm up. Sakura eyed it for a second before grinning, hitting it with her own in classic low-five style. Sure. We're teammates now after all. Ah, Sakura-chan, your shirt, Naruto said quickly, turning away, though he was still watching from the corner of his eyes. Sakura immediately turned around. Arms crossed over her chest once again. Past or future, he's still a bit of a perv. Meanwhile, Sasuke took his ear away from the door and began to walk down the steps, finally heading home. Well, that had been entirely unexpected, if not extremely welcome. He certainly wasn't in his original timeline if things like this could happen. A small smile made its way onto his face, refusing to budge. Maybe this time travel thing wasn't so bad after all. Naruto let out a long breath as he finally closed the door to his apartment behind him. He could barely still believe that it had worked out so well. His apology, which had only been given to hopefully lower Sakura's dislike of him, had actually turned into her apologizing back and agreeing to be friends. She didn't even mention Sasuke once the entire day, something that was strange in itself, but that fact had given him the confidence to approach her. Am I really back in time? He wondered for the 100th time, sinking into the worn-out couch with a thump. It looked like everything was the way it used to be, hell, it felt like the way it used to be, but there were definitely differences. Sakura was nice. Sasuke didn't say his dream was to kill his brother, but the massacre still definitely happened, so what was different? Clearly it was something, but was that necessarily a bad thing? He seemed much more level-headed in general now. Sasuke's obsession with vengeance had driven them all apart. Perhaps even caused events to end as they did. This time though. If he were able to keep the team together. Naruto quickly shook his head, stamping down on the feeling. The sheer amount of hope that had risen within him just then was simply intense to experience. He was still so torn about being young again. True, none of the bad things had happened yet, but everything he'd worked for and achieved had also been undone. All the people he'd become close to. None of them cared about him anymore. Not even Tsunade. It was bittersweet at best. Still, it didn't change the fact that his reality was a replay of his past. No matter what happened, he would deal with things as they came. Better to focus on more present issues. Like the fact that he was getting embarrassed over seeing through Sakura's soaked shirt. What the heck? Just the thought was getting him red-faced again. Maybe as an actual 12-year-old he'd have been embarrassed, but he was a bit more than twice that in actuality. Thinking on it though. I've been acting pretty immature, he said aloud, frowning at the ceiling. Did the kid me just not go away? Am I both? Well, this sucks. XXX, the Hokage is ready to see you, Hatake-san. Thanks, Tenri-chan, the Jonin said with an eye smile, heading down the hall to the Hokage's office. Kakashi, I take it you finally met with your team? Hiruzen Sarutobi gave him a knowing smile as he took a pull on his pipe. The papers that covered his desk were forgotten as he focused on his guest. If they are anything like my old kids, I'd imagine they'll be quite the handful. I was reading the final academy reports earlier, always interesting to see what there is to say about our star rookies. Kakashi took the seat opposite the Hokage's desk with a small exhale. I read them as well. Did you know that Sasuke wants to travel? He asked blandly. That was his dream. To see the world, apparently. Didn't matter where, just wants to travel. Sakura wants to make the people she cares about proud of her, and Naruto wants to become friends with people from all over. He seemed pretty excited at the prospect. The Hokage slowly took his pipe from his mouth, placing it lightly on the desk. What? When I went to pick them up they were all knocked out too. It was cute to see them asleep like that. Got a picture, he added, holding up 2 fingers in a V shape. Before I hit them with the water jutsu, anyway. Gold star reactions. So their profiles were more than a little inaccurate, if what I've seen is true, Kakashi finished with a shrug. I'm actually curious to see how they do tomorrow, he continued with a smile. They seem like a friendly group. You don't say. Hiruzen chuckled, glancing over at the portrait of his predecessor at the side of the room. It wasn't often that the academy profiles were wrong, but it had happened before. Particularly with more notable shinobi. How interesting. Maybe I'll watch as well. Good morning, Kakashi-sensei, said Sakura politely as the man finally drew close to the 3 soon-to-be genin. Sakura, Sasuke interrupted, tapping his wrist. Oh, you're right. Good afternoon, sensei. Hey everyone, sorry I'm late, the jonin said easily, looking between them. I got lost on the road of life. It's a nice day, Sakura agreed, looking up at the clear blue sky. Indeed it had been a while since she'd relaxed under the warm sun without a care, her village at relative peace with the world. I see, did you all eat? Just finished lunch actually, said Naruto, pointing to a couple takeout bags by the nearby tree. Want some? We have a little left over. I ate on the way, Kakashi replied, completely unsurprised they hadn't been tricked by his light scare tactic. I've been thinking about what you all said yesterday and I've decided to modify the original test I was going to give you. How so? Asked Sasuke. Indeed all 3 looked very curious at the news. Had they possibly heard about his test before this? If so then he'd definitely made the right decision. Well, instead of making you fight each other to get some bells from me I think I'll just have you get a single one instead. A half-hour time limit sounds good. He dangled the single bell on a string before their eyes. It gave off a minuscule jingle. However, Kakashi pushed his forehead protector up to reveal a fully matured Sharingan spinning expectedly. It'll be harder. Silence. Then. Isn't that one of your eye things? Naruto asked Sasuke, turning away from his sensei. The Uchiha actually blinked in surprise. He always thought Naruto hadn't known about the Sharingan initially. How do you know about that? He demanded, the statement not entirely forced. Naruto, however, scratched the back of his head sheepishly. The KMP caught me a lot when I first started doing pranks, he admitted. Their eyes were like that sometimes. Is Kakashi-sensei part of your clan? I thought, you know. Sharingan Kakashi has always been a popular topic with the Uchiha, Sasuke said with a nod, adding after a moment, back when they were all still alive, that is. And no, he isn't. You don't say, said Kakashi with a smile, though they all knew he was humoring them. You're one of the top ninja in the entire village, taught by the 4th Hokage himself, Sasuke responded, as if that explained everything. Well, to be honest it pretty much did. From an outside perspective, the 3 genin had hit the proverbial jackpot on senseis. Really? Naruto gave Kakashi an odd look. He bumped past Sasuke to get closer, giving the white-haired jonin a wide-eyed look. That's so cool. He was a very good sensei, Kakashi said after a moment, eyes lingering on Naruto. And a good mentor. I was lucky to have him. I'm so psyched. Naruto exclaimed, practically bouncing with energy. He was looking quite eager to begin. Sensei, can we start? Whenever you'd like, Kakashi said with a shrug, glancing over at Sakura. The girl was watching them with uncertainty but still ready to move. Okay. At that the boy dropped into a seated position, giving Kakashi a momentary view of Sasuke with his hands in a tiger seal. It was only for an instant though because he was immediately engulfed in an enormous fireball. Naruto, seemingly unconcerned by the proximity of the flames directly above his head, was laughing. Ha ha ha, tricked him, he said happily. Sasuke just huffed, cutting off the jutsu and looking around. Of course we didn't, dope, he escaped. Indeed there was a blackened log where Kakashi had been seconds before. Oh come on, that was perfect timing. Naruto said grumpily. Okay, he hadn't expected it to work at all but he was still annoyed a bit. Sasuke had caught onto his plan instantly and carried it through easily. Their sensei, of course, was long gone. Even now he couldn't detect the guy. Kakashi really was one of the top ninja around. So what's the plan? Sakura said quickly, coming over to the other two. True, they just pulled off a nice combo, but if they didn't want to work together, I wasn't kidding about what I just said. Sasuke gave each of them a serious look. Father talked about him all the time. Our sensei is one of the strongest ninja in the entire village. He's been a possible Hokage candidate for years. Unless we work together we just don't stand a chance. Especially with his Sharingan out. At least not without being found out, the three all unknowingly thought at the same time. If there's anything you've been holding back from the academy, now's the time to say so. Damn sensei. Sasuke thought in annoyance. Why couldn't he have just kept the regular test? What caused the change? That small meeting the day before? Had that really been enough? I can do this. There was a puff of smoke and suddenly there was another Naruto standing with them. Hey, he said, waving at them. I thought you were bad at Bunshin, Sakura said in a very convincing confusion. It helped that she'd been expecting at least a dozen of them at once as opposed to one. Naruto's chakra control was simply abysmal. He'd probably gotten lucky for once. I had a breakthrough, Naruto said with a shrug. A big one, he added when Sasuke poked the grinning clone, eyes widening immediately. How about you? Sasuke asked Sakura. Unknown to the other two boys, Sakura was going through quite the inner dilemma. She couldn't reveal anything regarding her medical abilities or knowledge without some significant preparation. She also couldn't use any of the techniques Tsunade had taught her. Who knew how she'd even arrange getting trained by the legend once again? Without that, what did she really have? Everything she typically did revolved around it after all. Oh, hang on. Kakashi smiled to himself as he watched the three genin, plus one clone, huddle together closely as they talked strategy. Sasuke, given his knowledge of the Sharingan as well as the Jonin himself, was most definitely leading the group at the moment. The white-haired man was quite curious to see how he'd try fighting against his clan's famous bloodline. Then there was his sensei's son. Apart from checking in on him occasionally, there wasn't much he knew about the boy except through frequent reports. Umbu hadn't really afforded him the kind of freedom to keep personal tabs on anyone. Captain did have its perks though. Finally, Sakura was a total mystery. He honestly didn't expect much from the girl compared to the other two. Of course, it wouldn't do to start training his team by underestimating them. After all, they might actually get the bell. Pfft, yeah right, Triple X. An older man chuckled lightly as he watched Kakashi through an unassuming glass sphere. He manipulated the control seal to give him a better view and sat back, prepping his pipe for a long smoke. Tea, Nico? Thank you, Hokage-sama, the purple-haired Umbu said softly, taking the freshly poured cup in her hands. Her eyes however stayed focused on the crystal sphere. XXX The battle started in the typical fashion most shinobi battles started. One moment there was nothing, in the next there was movement. Kakashi stood among a number of trees, paying little heed to the flickers that danced between them. His Sharingan rendered the cover useless as the masses of chakra surrounded him. The whisper of cut air reached his ears, causing him to lean back as shuriken crossed his vision in both directions. Absently he noted that they had immediately gone for the kill. A small grin hid from the world under a face mask. Kakashi leapt upwards as the ground at his feet burst open, orange-sleeved hands clawing for his feet as dozens of Narutos emerged from all around, shuriken filling the air in a storm. Kakashi pulled a kunai, deflecting the incoming projectiles that were actually going to hit him while watching the vast majority miss him entirely. Ninja wire suddenly filled the air around him, ready to entangle him and bring him back to the ground. A decent strategy. Kakashi formed a single-hand seal. But not quite enough. He vanished, allowing the log he'd changed places with to become trapped instead of him. And suddenly ducked as a foot passed through the space his head had just been occupying. His legs left the ground as another attack made to drop him. Now completely horizontal he struck out, simultaneously repelling both his attackers as he returned to a regular stance. Both Sasuke and Naruto slid back, having guarded against the hits with their crossed arms, but were moving forward again nearly instantly, having been helped each by another Naruto clone. How many of those things could the boy make? Deciding to test the boy's taijutsu skills, Kakashi engaged them at the upper levels of a typical genin, only to quickly accelerate into chunin territory. Perhaps individually they were manageable, but the two worked incredibly well together, covering each other when he tried to sneak in extra hits and setting one another up for follow-up strikes. If he were even an average chunin, he likely would have eventually fallen to their combo. Without the Sharingan, obviously. Using it just made everything absolutely hopeless for the lot of them. I should go find Sakura, I wonder what she is up to. The thought crossed his mind innocuously and he moved with a burst of speed neither boy could keep up with. A devastating kick to the chest sent Naruto bodily from their current battlefield while the second kick had Sasuke joining him, though not before another immense blast of flame raced back to cook the Jonin alive. Kakashi disappeared in a shunshin, now standing above the area against a tree, scanning the masses of chakra below for the one he'd identified as Sakura before their battle had even begun. Found you. The girl was actually quite a distance away, hiding at the edge of a clearing he'd scouted earlier. Within seconds he was upon her, aiming a strike at her unprotected back. Instead of hitting the off-guard girl though he connected with a suddenly appearing Naruto, sending them both rolling into the clearing but saving her from the hit. Of course, Kakashi wasn't to be denied. Two kunai buried themselves in the ground at Naruto's feet, hissing for a split second before the explosive tags on them detonated with force. Sakura was knocked into the air and hit the ground hard, though pushed herself to her feet despite the damage. Naruto, who had once again taken the brunt of the explosion, was gone. He had been a clone. Almost at once, 8 more Naruto clones joined her from the trees. "Stay back Sakura-chan, I've got this," one of them said confidently. Not even waiting for a response they all charged. Kakashi almost smiled under his mask as the 8 dashed in to meet their doom. There was no way Sasuke hadn't warned them about facing his Sharingan head-on. Had the frustration of nothing working finally gotten to his head? With what could almost be called precognition, Kakashi strolled through the 8, never taking a single hit while expending minimal effort to end each clone. Within 4 seconds they had all been dispatched. Suddenly he flashed back 5 feet as both Sasuke and what was likely the original Naruto crashed into the spot he'd just been standing in. He had to give it to them, they didn't back down for anything. Now though. Leaf Village secret technique dash, his hands separated into 2 half-tiger seals. 2,000 years of pain. And that was the end of them. While Naruto and Sasuke both crashed into the ground in the distance to recover, Kakashi finally faced off with the third member of the group. She was a little worse for wear, her clothes were singed in places and outright missing in others, but apart from a light blow to her modesty she looked well enough. "I hope you don't think it'll be any easier if it's just me, even if I'm already hurt," Sakura said with a huff, already in a stance that immediately reminded him of the Hyuga's gentle fist. The buildup of chakra in her hands was also quite clear. Was she actually going to try to copy her classmate? "I think I do best up close." How interesting. A tensing of her legs was all the warning he had before Sakura was within his guard. Fast. His arm came up to block her open palm, causing the chakra she'd gathered to splash out and dissipate, doing nothing. He blocked 4 more strikes like this before Sakura withdrew, circling around his right as she threw a series of shuriken he rapidly deflected with a drawn kunai. He watched them fall in a very slow motion, his Sharingan spinning as it drained his chakra at a light and steady rate. Sakura veered to the side as the shuriken she'd thrown came speeding back at her, using the chakra in her hand to sharply angle herself back at the Jonin for another chakra-infused salvo. Still the attack was blocked effortlessly, and after a dozen or so strikes she retreated, rejoining her partially recovered squad. "Che, a lot harder than it looks," she grumbled, glancing at the boys. "You two okay?" "We'll live," Naruto said with a wince. 2 lifetimes of that attack was too many. "This guy is crazy, he doesn't have any openings." "Everyone has openings." "I told you it's the Sharingan, we're moving in slow motion to him," Sasuke said, also doing his best to wipe the last few seconds of his life from his mind. "The only hits we're even landing are because he wants to block them." "Don't stop now, your time's almost up," Kakashi said with a cheerful smile. "If he doesn't have any openings we'll just have to make some," Sasuke said with a scowl. "One more time, give him everything you've got. It's all or nothing." Again the 3 dashed in at multiple angles, Sasuke opting for a dual-wield style with 2 kunai, Naruto with a single, and Sakura again with chakra in her hands. Still holding the kunai of his own, Kakashi wove through the 3, blocking the attacks he couldn't easily dodge and striking back with pinpoint precision. Barely 2 seconds went by without one of the 3 being knocked from the melee, but they always recovered quickly and rejoined the fray. "I have to wonder why you 3 hid your skills in the academy," Kakashi mused aloud as he ducked low beneath a sweeping kick from Sasuke while simultaneously parrying an attack from Sakura to the side. His hand darted up to grab Sasuke's still extended leg and used his superior strength to throw him into an oncoming Naruto. "Anyone want to explain?" "Being subtle has its uses," Sakura said briefly, lunging forward suddenly. Kakashi sidestepped her by just enough so that her hand almost touched the bell at his waist. He really did enjoy giving them the illusion it was just out of their reach. He then helped her along into the dirt with a kick at her back. In combat as well, he smiled back at her, turning away when he saw that she wasn't getting up. It looked as if her stamina had finally given out. About time too, even just minimally using his Sharingan for half an hour was draining. "Are you two done as well?" he called over to the boys who were untangling themselves. "You've got about 2 minutes left so you can still try to not fail." "I don't know." Sasuke finally pushed Naruto off of him and stood up, dusting himself off. "What do you think, Sakura?" It was then that he realized something was wrong. Kakashi's eyes darted to his waist ere the bell that was dangling peacefully suddenly melted away as he cleared his body of the genjutsu he'd been unknowingly placed under. Continuing to turn his head, he saw Sakura get to her feet. "Haha, score." Sakura held up 2 fingers in victory, a beaming smile on her face as she presented the bell. Kakashi, who had frozen at the sight, suddenly chuckled and pulled his headband back over his Sharingan. "Ma, you actually got me." XXX. Meanwhile, on the other side of the village, the Hokage was chuckling as he watched the scene through his glass orb. Though Nico's face was still masked, he could tell she was giving the scene a shocked expression. It was indeed exactly as Kakashi had said. Team 7, and they were a true Team 7, was an exciting bunch. He was proud of all of them, not only for their exceptional skill and ability to work together flawlessly, but for seeming to have accepted one another as comrades. It all fed into the same thing. Leaf. Shinobi were taught that their true strength laid within teamwork. There was no replacement for an excellent team. Add to the fact that Kakashi actually seemed interested in teaching them. Those three were going to be absolute monsters. XXX, it is my dream. Kakashi began, instantly grabbing the attention of the three new genin, to ensure my sensei's legacy lives on, and become a person worthy of my best friend's memory. Maybe I'll get a cute wife too, he added with a small, undeniably perverted chuckle. Not like that you won't, they thought as one, all with flat expressions. So congratulations. As of this moment we are officially Team 7. Yada. Even sprawled out on ground, Naruto was able to give a whooping cheer of joy. Sasuke wore a satisfied grin as he holstered the two kunai he'd been using with a flourish, and Sakura went to go help her hapless blonde teammate up, smiling widely all the while. There was no denying that at that moment, things were good. Better than good. Better than great, even. It just felt right. And for a reason that he couldn't quite explain, let alone begin to understand, Kakashi felt it too. Team 7, Kakashi paused as the three snapped to attention from their various positions. Meet here tomorrow morning at 8 for our first assignment. Also, make sure to eat breakfast, he added with an eye smile. And with that he vanished in a swirl of leaves. I still can't believe that worked, Naruto said as they walked, shaking his head. Even the best eyes are useless when they aren't looking, Sasuke said with a shrug. Besides, he really went easy on us. Blinking constantly. Yeah, I could tell, Sakura agreed tiredly. I've got so much training to do. You two did a lot of the leg work. Did you really have to take the blast though? The Uchiha added disapprovingly. No matter how blown away he was with her skill, he couldn't help but point out the apparent flaw in her performance. You're lucky you weren't hurt worse. I know, but I had to sell it, she reasoned, privately not telling them she'd healed the worst of the damage with a unique medical technique. Absently she tugged her shirt a bit higher to make sure she stayed fully covered. The cloth on her right shoulder was basically gone after the exchange following the explosion. Mom's not going to be happy though. You were great, Sakura-chan. Don't think anything otherwise, Naruto insisted cheerfully. Indeed, that would have been much more difficult without her. Or Sasuke for that matter. What drug-induced past had he found himself in where Sasuke was a team player and Sakura was fast like Lee? Sure, Naruto, just call me Sakura, okay? Said boy seemed taken aback for a second but quickly grinned, nodding. Anyway, let's celebrate. We can, but Naruto suddenly broke off, laughing awkwardly. Actually, I just remembered I don't have any more money for food. We can wait until after our first mission, I guess. Sasuke hesitated for a second, frowning at the situation. He knew quite well what Naruto's financial situation should be like these days, but they weren't supposed to be close enough to just pay for each other off the bat. Still, celebrating actually didn't sound so bad this time around, so. Let's go to my place. Hang on, what? Your place? Perhaps it was because of how surprised they were to hear the suggestion that both Sasuke and Naruto spoke in unison. Why not? My mom always cooks a lot of food because my dad likes to eat. There's more than enough for you too. Besides, she paused, looking between the two of them, I want them to meet my teammates and they'll want to see who'll be watching my back out in the field. The two boys exchanged blinking expressions before returning their attention to the girl. If you don't mind. Thanks, Sakura. Naruto said after a second, still feeling a bit apprehensive. This was new. As new could get for someone who was living their life over. For the record, that was pretty new. Sasuke just nodded, not saying anything. Well then, meet me by the big bank in the center of the village. We live in the residential district near there. 5. Getting nods in return, she smiled. Good, I'll be waiting. Make sure you're clean, too. Because who could really trust boys with something like being clean, she figured. And with that she walked off, leaving the two to stand there in silence. It wasn't until the girl was out of sight before it was broken. Hey, Sasuke, does Sakura seem, I dunno. Naruto trailed off for a second before continuing. Different? To this Sasuke shrugged. He had no idea how much this particular past was different from his own, so he decided to play it safe with his response. Of course, he wholeheartedly agreed. It seems we've underestimated her drive to become a shinobi. Naruto blinked before nodding vigorously. Yeah. It was with a small sigh that Kakashi finally sat down at the restaurant booth. He was the final member of the group to have arrived, naturally, though the others were all well aware of his habits and weren't bothered by them at all. Of course, they were equally less messed up than he was and similarly happy about said fact. So, how did it go? He asked, his soul eye moving from person. There was Asuma, Kurenai, Genma, and Yuma. Including him, they made half of the 10 Jonin given teams of rookies from the academy this semester. Team 10 passed, though it was close, Asuma said first. Shikaku's boy is too smart for his own good, I guess it helps he's the laziest brat I've ever met. Seems the only thing that gets him motivated is the idea of laying around. A lazy brat for a lazy bum, how nice, said Kurenai with a chuckle, getting a similar response from the others in the group. Team 8 passed as well, with flying colors I might add. I was really impressed. It only took them half an hour to find me and I hid myself well enough to counter their strengths, too. They're a great group. Even the Inazaka? Genma asked with a knowing grin. The members of that particular clan were more than a little infamous for their baser instincts, much in the same way Kurenai was more than a little attractive. I might have had to put a slightly serious genjutsu on him for leering, but he came around quickly, she continued cheerfully. Ha ha ha, well, Team 5 failed spectacularly, said Genma. There was this moment where all three of them got tangled up together and landed in a big heap. Then they started fighting each other. The man covered his face with a hand, groaning. Failed them right there. With luck they'll pull their acts together. They weren't bad overall, just not ready to work in a team. My group was about the same, Yuma said with a sigh. One of the boys had some skill though, so maybe I'll put in a note for him to be looked at again sooner. They'd all do better under Kuro-kun anyway. Finally the Jonin turned to the Cyclops of the group expectantly. So? Passed, he said simply. Eyebrows around the table went up as one. Pressure? Asuma asked slowly. Kakashi shook his head. Nope, the regular way. I'm impressed, to be honest. Wow, glad I didn't take that bet. They're an interesting group, Kakashi said with a shrug. He placed his now empty teacup on the table, causing the others to double take. Somehow it had been emptied while the man had been speaking. Tell us about them, said Yuma in interest. If they were able to pass your test, everyone else must have missed something big. Maybe, Kakashi said with a shrug. Naruto and Sasuke have been hiding some skill, but Sakura is the one I'm most surprised about. She's actually quite dedicated to the job. They worked very well in a team. Honestly, if you hadn't witnessed it firsthand, I doubt I'd believe you, Asuma cut in. That Sakura girl is apparently rivals with Ino, but with Ino being in a big clan and Sakura not, I'd figured she was fair weaker. Not that Ino is anything particularly special at the moment, but she's got some talent, that's for sure. I wouldn't know, I haven't seen your genin fight yet. Well, maybe after a little while we can arrange something. Nothing like some friendly competition. Ha! Friendly competition, Gemma laughed. I think Guy has completely filled that spot against Kakashi for all eternity. Besides, you just want to win some money. It may be unwise anyway, Kakashi added lightly. I was thinking about upping the pace a bit for them. I'm sure they'll be able to handle it, but I can't say the same for any other team going against them. Genin or not. Right. Kurenai smiled. So Kakashi felt his team would be the best, huh? They'd see about that. Just don't kill them accidentally. Well, Kakashi said, pushing himself to his feet. It certainly wouldn't be by accident. And with that he walked back out of the restaurant. Man, that guy is something else, Asuma mused, eyes still on the door. Anyway, how do you want to split dash? But he cut off as he returned his attention to the booth. Gemma and Yuma, who had been opposite each other against the window, were both gone, window wide open. Turning to Kurenai, who was still sitting next to him, his words once again faded as she herself turned into a number of flower petals that blew away on a non-existent breeze. And just like that, Asuma was alone. Your check, Shinobi-san, the waitress said with a smile, placing the small slip of paper in front of him. Asuma just regarded it with a deadpan. Assholes. A few blocks away, Kakashi waked with his book out, apparently absorbed as he smoothly wove through traffic. His mind, however, was as far away from the perverse material as it could be. I died. They'd taken the bell. They took it with him using his Sharingan. Yes, he'd done a great deal to inconvenience himself for their handicap. Yes, he was only operating at a fraction of his ability in all fields. Yet despite this he'd still been incredibly advantaged in the fight, and the three had come out victorious. By putting him in a genjutsu of all things. When was the last time he'd fallen for such an attack from anyone less than someone of Kurenai's ability, a woman whose ability was often spoken in the same sentence with that of Itachi Uchiha? This, as well as the rest of the fight, told him two things. Firstly, he needed to get his fat ass back in shape. Second, he had a damn strong team. They could probably pass the Chunin exam right now. Where did he even begin when it came to analyzing them? Well, perhaps he should begin with the sole girl on the team, blowing away his expectations and being the key to their plan to get the bell from him. Her taijutsu was textbook solid, nothing to write home about, but certainly not poor by any standard. More than that, her speed was alarmingly high for her stature. She didn't have the pure muscle mass built up like her teammates, so she relied on something much more impressive. Impeccable chakra control. Yes, she likely didn't have much in the way of reserves, but she used what she had with a precision found in few. Case in point, she'd put him in a genjutsu just by touching him. The fact that it had taken as long as it did likely spoke to it being a newly developed technique than anything else. Her mind was sharp and her ability to replicate what she'd seen was quite high. How many other clanless children could emulate Juken stances so well? Sasuke was just as surprising as his teammate, though for different reasons. Kakashi very much doubted the academy had produced a more talented genin in years, but Sasuke pulled ahead in ways his year mates wouldn't see until at least making Chunin. Everything about his skill spoke to a practiced sharpness of an unparalleled level. This went double for his intellect. The strategies Sasuke used to keep him on his toes and distracted from his allies were effective and flexible. He also moved like someone who had trained with a sword, though he didn't carry one. A secret then? Finally, there was Naruto. Shadow clone technique? Where the hell had he learned that? Coupled with the most chakra he'd ever seen anyone have, and it made for an endless wave of fighting power and stamina. But that wasn't what made it so amazing. Naruto knew intuitively how best to use the clone technique, not only offensively or defensively, but in a supportive role. Not once when his team needed help the most was he not there to help. A pull here. A nudge there. Naruto made everything possible and then some. He also hit like a train. Kid had some serious weight behind him. turning these three into a team. They could be incredible. Maybe even among the strongest in the world. If he guided them the right way. Kakashi suddenly came to a stop in the street. Realization dawning across his face as he stared straight ahead. This actually sounds fun. Holy shit. Sasuke let his eyes wander about the intersection he waited at, absently flipping a kunai in his left hand a couple times before switching it to the other. Villagers moved about with purpose, occasionally sparing him a look but returning to their business when they saw his headband or clan symbol. Those who recognized him gave a nod of respect or a quick, Uchiha-san, to which he acknowledged with a nod of his own. The nearby clock on the outside of the bank read 4:50, which put him at waiting for 10 minutes. Naruto, of course, was Sasuke. On time? Naruto? The orange-clad genin skidded to a halt in front of him, panting slightly. Hey, Sasuke. I'm not late, right? In response, Sasuke just pointed to the clock, to which Naruto sighed in relief. I meant to leave ages ago so I wouldn't be late, but I took a long time making sure I was ready. You think it's okay that I'm wearing what I usually do? You changed. Indeed, Sasuke had changed into something a little more formal than what he usually wore, as it seemed like the appropriate thing to do. Habit, he said dismissively. It's fine, Sakura's not going to hit you or anything. She invited us over after all. Huh, yeah, that's good, Naruto laughed, rubbing the back of his head. No one's ever invited me over before, so I wasn't sure what to do. I don't exactly have anything else to wear anyway. Where did you get those things anyway? Sasuke asked, genuinely curious. There was no doubt the more skilled shinobi tended to wear whatever they wanted, regardless of how eye-popping it could be. Case in point, Naruto wore orange of all things, but damn if he hadn't been able to back it up with some ability. Still, at this point in his life it honestly seemed like. The person in charge of keeping an eye on me after I left the orphanage got me a bunch of them a little after I started the academy. She wasn't very nice about it though, he added with a frown. Did she hate you? The blunt question made the blonde wince, eyes ducking low before coming back up to meet a level gaze from Sasuke. Whether it was the complete lack of judgment or even a bit of understanding Naruto saw in his eyes, neither could tell, but he did not drop his gaze again. Yeah. He scratched the back of his head uncomfortably. It took me a while, but I guess she was probably hoping I'll get myself killed on a mission. Pfft. It's not funny. Naruto said angrily. He stopped though when Sasuke just held up a hand. If that woman really thinks wearing a bright color would get you killed, she hasn't been paying attention to anything in the past few years. I'll bet all the other villages have you in their bingo books as Konoha's pranking master. Naruto just grinned at the clear compliment, cheered significantly. Well, I guess when you put it like that. What's a bingo book? And just like that, Sasuke's palm met his face. Sasuke. Naruto. Sakura-cha, Sakura. Naruto called out, waving the girl over. Great, you're both here on time. Follow. She paused, eyes falling on the object in Sasuke's hand. Why do you have a kunai? Sasuke was genuinely caught off guard as he looked down at the weapon. Why had he brought it? I got it, Naruto said quickly, making a familiar hand seal. At once another Naruto popped into existence and took the thing, running off with a wave. He'll drop it off at your place. Right, thanks. He was still looking at the now empty hand in small wonder. When was the last time he'd gone anywhere without a weapon? When was the last time he felt he could go somewhere without a weapon? Somewhere safe? Weird. That's a pretty useful jutsu, Sasuke said as they walked. You said it, Naruto agreed. I still don't know why it was in the Hokage's scroll. If everyone knew it, the village would be unstoppable. Probably because it needs a ton of chakra, Sasuke reasoned. Can you teach it to me? Sure, I can try. Is that safe though? Sakura warned. She didn't want her friend dying after all. If you try to use a jutsu that you don't have the chakra for, it'll fail at best. At worst you could die from chakra exhaustion. Sasuke wasn't too sure what to say. He could probably use the jutsu, but he didn't want to push it, so. Why don't we just run it by Kakashi-sensei? He probably knows it anyway. That sounds like a good idea, Sakura said, relieved. Anyway, we're here. Let me just go inside really quickly and I'll be right back. The home was quaint and tucked away between two other residential buildings. As Sakura disappeared, Naruto suddenly turned to Sasuke. Done, I left it in the back with some shuriken you had laying around. That works. Hang on, how do you know that? Sasuke asked, giving him an odd look. Internally though, he was fist-pumping at the opportunity his friend had handed him. The sooner Naruto realized the trick with shadow clones the better. What do you mean? I just dropped it. There? Naruto gave him the most befuddled look he could muster, while doing his best not to give himself away. He needed to be really careful about his knowledge or things could get dicey. That's really weird, he finally said. Let's talk about it later though, I need to focus. And he did. Even though he'd lived years beyond this time, he couldn't understate how important this was to him. It was ironic that after everything he'd faced, getting invited to a friend's home was making him 1,000 times more nervous. What if they hated him for the Kyuubi? What if he did something wrong that messed everything up? Sakura actually liked him this time. Sasuke was cool too. He didn't want to lose that. Sasuke, you've been to people's homes before, right? He nodded, watching Naruto carefully. The genin looked quite nervous. Understandable, considering the way pretty much every adult in the village treated him. What am I supposed to do? I don't want to be rude. Unfortunately, he didn't know what would happen here either. Just say thank you for their hospitality and don't do anything extra, Sasuke said after a second. Oh, make sure you put your shoes with the others just inside the door. And when you sit he paused as Naruto's eyes kept getting wider. Instead he moved closer and lowered his voice. Relax and just follow my lead. If anything happens I'll help you out, okay? Yeah, thanks. The front door suddenly slid open, showing Sakura in a much more casual home outfit that had both boys blinking. Come on in. Whatever the boys thought they'd see was immediately forgotten as they came face to face with a woman who could only be Sakura's mother. The welcoming smile faltered as her eyes moved from black to blonde. Hi, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, one of Sakura's teammates. Nice to meet you, Naruto blurted out, eyes hitting the floor as his gaze dropped. He'd nearly lost his steam at the surprised look the woman gave him when she realized who he was. And I'm Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura's other teammate. We both thank you for your hospitality, he said politely with a bow of his head. He subtly put a hand at Naruto's back, hoping to give him a little confidence. How polite. Sakura's mother was clearly caught off guard at seeing Naruto, but to her credit she took it in stride. Welcome to my home. I'm Sakura's mother, Mabuki Haruno. Please come in. As she turned to lead them further in, Sasuke quickly followed with Naruto close behind. No one saw the worried look on Sakura's face. It felt like a punch to the gut, honestly. She remembered as a little girl being told by her parents not to play with Naruto, but they always cited his being a troublemaker and that he was constantly getting caught up with the KMP. It made sense, and as years with him in her class went on, she'd fed into the opinions of her peers all too easily. And yet, she couldn't help but give her mother the benefit of the doubt. Like her father, she was a ninja of the village. And knew the importance of teams. Sakura herself had already spoken highly of her team, though not by name. In setting this up, she'd created a scenario to show that her parents were good people, who wouldn't judge Naruto because of the Kyuubi. Would they really give him a chance? Kizashi Haruno was not who the boys had been expecting. Perhaps it had been the rather serious flashes that Mabuki gave off, but they'd both expected a stern-faced, towering man with not a smiling muscle in his face. Instead, "Dear, you can't give the children alcohol." Nonsense. They're all considered adults in the eyes of the village with those headbands. Our petal is all grown up and making her parents so proud. I should tell you boys about the time when she was barely taller than my knee, Daewad. It was all Sasuke and Naruto could do to keep up with the pace of the chaotic conversation that was bouncing around the dining table, each holding the sake cup forced into their hands in bemusement. Sakura was scarlet with embarrassment from the way her father was doting, but laughing at the same time at his antics. Mabuki, it seemed, was the most level-headed of the bunch. "Of course, they're adults now," she repeated dryly, serving herself a dumpling. "I'll be sure to remember that the next time the Ryudo family brings their son for a visit. Which is why after this toast you won't be having any more," Kizashi said immediately, getting his wife to roll her eyes. "But let's not get ahead of ourselves." He raised the glass. "To the new Team 7. Team 7. And they all drank, followed by the immediate coughing of said team. "Ugh, it's horrible," Sakura complained, putting the cup down with a shudder. Sasuke just grimaced and coughed again while Naruto thumped his chest. "Nothing on what the boss toad liked to carry around, but that stuff wasn't made for humans anyway." "Of course it wasn't like this stuff was much better. Only an adult will appreciate the taste," Kizashi said with a nod, draining a second cup. It didn't seem to have an effect on him at all. He may as well have been drinking water. "You two must feel pretty lucky having my daughter on your team, am I right?" "Yes. Dad. Tell us how the test went. With that guy as your sensei, it's amazing you passed it all. Spare us no detail." Sakura and Sasuke blinked before naturally turning to Naruto, who went wide-eyed. "You tell good stories," Sasuke said with a shrug. Also, he didn't want to talk much if he could avoid it. "Make sure you don't brag too much," Sakura said with a nod. "We leave this to you." Naruto took a deep breath before giving his cheeks a light slap. "All right." He jumped to his feet, putting in his best Jiraiya. "Hang on to your sake, Haruno-san. This is a story about how your daughter put the great Sharingan Kakashi into a genjutsu with help from her amazing teammates to win the challenge. The story of 3 genin who would forever protect the Leaf Village from untold perils. The tale of the birth of the greatest team of shinobi the world has ever seen." He grinned, too excited by the prospect of his new future. Too excited to let a shadow of nerves stop him from moving forward. "And it all started when we had a pond dumped on our heads. It's been a long time since I had a meal like that." Sasuke's voice broke the silence that had stood between the two boys since leaving Sakura's home. It was late in the evening, the two having stayed for much longer than they'd expected. Eventually they couldn't stay any longer without imposing, and the Harunos bid them a good night, leaving the boys to their thoughts. It was good. Naruto's gaze was on the darkening sky. "Yeah." Silence returned to the pair as they continued to walk, occasionally passing another person on the street. Eventually they reached the point where they would have to split up to continue home. Sasuke to the left, Naruto straight. There wasn't another soul in sight. "See you at training tomorrow." "Yeah, see ya." Yet neither moved from the intersection. Lights began flickering on in places to illuminate the streets, and homes became even more conspicuous by their windows. "What's wrong?" Sasuke asked, looking at his teammate. "It's nothing." "What about you?" "Nothing." "Okay, I'll be honest if you will," said Naruto, holding out his pinky. "No laughing." "Fine," Sasuke agreed, hooking his own. I don't want to go home, Naruto admitted, expression having fallen greatly. It just reminds me I'm on my own. Sasuke sighed. I didn't expect going to Sakura's place to affect me that much either. You too? Naruto's surprised look was met with Sasuke's raised eyebrows. Oh, right. Sorry. Sasuke said nothing, his eyes fixed back in the direction of Sakura's home. It's just. Naruto looked at his empty hands. How do we get that? Naruto and Sasuke exchanges brief looks. Hey, Sasuke. Wanna come to my place? Hello, Iruka, anything exciting lined up for us today? If anything, Iruka's smile was just as enthusiastic as the one Kakashi was wearing beneath his mask. Enough that you can pick your favorite one, he replied, beaming at the emotionless expressions he was getting from the three genin in front of his raised desk. We need a fence painted, a warehouse organized, litter picked up, and... He paused for dramatic effect. Babysitting. You suck, Iruka-sensei, said Naruto flatly. Karma's a female dog, Naruto, Iruka said bluntly, face decidedly smug. Maybe in your next life you won't prank people so much and have some respect for a formal education. Much to everyone's silent amusement, Naruto groaned loudly, hands grabbing his hair in aggravation as he slumped to the floor. Sensei, isn't there anything else we could do? Sakura asked, her voice somewhat strained. They had, after all, done nothing but D-ranks all week. For a day, as a matter of fact. We've done over 20 missions already. 20. Sakura was almost beside herself with irritation. They'd barely done half that last time and they'd gone to enter the damn Chunin exams right after. Months later. This Kakashi was crazy. I'm sorry Sakura, even though your team has an excellent record so far, you haven't been together long enough to qualify something outside of the village, Iruka explained, much more willing to talk to one of his best and most attentive students. What about something inside the village then? Asked Sasuke, pushing his annoyance away with a sigh. There must be something more challenging than painting people's fences. Well. Iruka paused to give Kakashi a silent question to which the man shrugged apathetically. I suppose I do have something you could do. I normally would give this to a more veteran genin team, but why not? Against all odds, I've actually heard really good things about your teamwork and maybe you'll learn something too. He shuffled through a pile of scrolls before tossing one to Sasuke. What is it? Asked Naruto dejectedly, finally coming out of his inner turmoil. There's been a request for a team to assist with training newer reserve forces. As I understand it, one of their Chunin is in the hospital for something and they didn't want to slack off. Demonstrate what a functioning genin team looks like, Sasuke read off the scroll before snapping it shut and stowing it away. Easy. Anything's better than what we're doing now, Naruto groused. GG. The boy suddenly lit up as the Hokage walked into the mission dispatch room. There was a low Hokage-sama that came from the room at large, most everyone bowing to some extent in respect, particularly the handful of civilians who were in the room being assigned escorts. The various Chunin, used to seeing the Hokage fairly regularly, went back to their business quickly. Naruto, be respectful, you're a genin now. Sakura prodded the beaming blonde on the side of his head lightly, a far cry from the usual wallop he'd until recently come to expect from her. It might have been different when you were a civilian, but he's your commanding officer now. Well said, Sakura, the Hokage said with a smile, approaching Iruka's position. He nodded at their team leader. Kakashi. Yo. Sakura sighed, bringing the heel of her hand to her forehead. This is literally the reason he has no respect for the chain of command. GG, I get that you can't give me the big missions yet, but you'd better hold one of the princess-saving ones for me. I know you get them, he said with an accusing finger. Sasuke couldn't help but smirk at that, because Naruto was actually entirely correct. Of course, Naruto, I'll be sure to keep an eye out, the Hokage said in good humor. Have they taken a mission, Irika? Reserve training, he said with a nod, already returning to his usual grind. Oh, an excellent task, the Kage said in approval. In that case, work well. What do you say, team? Kakashi said expectantly. Thank you, Irika-sensei, the three genin chorused. At least this time it didn't sound like they were all dead. There we go. It was with fairly wide eyes that the three genin entered the fort that was training ground 1 in the center of the village. Hundreds of teenagers stood in formation, all wearing a variation of a flak jacket and dark pants, as they went through the forms of what was often improperly referred to as academy-style taijutsu. A lone chunin stood at the head of the formation, watching them all with a critical eye. Strike. Ha. Strike. Ha. Further on the field was split into a large number of smaller sections that allowed for team training as well as anything extra involving the team composition. As Kakashi explained earlier, Training Field 2 was exclusively reserved for jutsu. Naruto did not have to do much of anything to fake his amazement. While he was more than aware of what his village fielded in military strength, he'd never been exposed to this side of it before. That could actually be said for a lot of things on the village. It was like much of his life had been spent as the main character of a deranged writer's story. Wait a minute. Yo, Kurosaki. Kakashi's voice brought the blonde out of his thoughts. A jonin with spiky, orangish hair had approached them from the nearby building, regarding them with a confused expression. The man was missing the sleeves on his uniform, exposing his well-defined arms. Thought that was you, he said, stopping in front of them. Sup, Kakashi? Showing your squad around? At this Kakashi gave Sasuke a meaningful look, nodding at the jonin. Understanding what he wanted, Sasuke fished out the mission scroll and held it out to the jonin. Team 7, reporting as requested. I thought you had a team of rookies, the man said, casting the three of them a critical look as he glanced over the scroll, eyes lingering on the seal at the bottom that authenticated it as a village D rank. As in graduated last week rookies. No offense, but we specifically asked for a team with more field experience. Any field experience? None taken, Kakashi returned with an eye smile. Somewhat disarmed, the jonin just sighed, returning the scroll to Sasuke. Whatever, if it doesn't work out we'll just request another team. Follow me. Either unaware or uncaring of the disgruntled expressions the genin were giving him, he led the four around the field. You should already know this, but the majority of Konoha's ninja forces are trained here before they get assigned somewhere. The academy is made to build specialist teams. We still put most children who want to become shinobi through there, but we simply don't have the jonin to field four-man squads with all those genin and take care of the higher-ranked missions the village is given. Only the very best get them and everyone else trains here. Eventually they get put on teams working under experienced chunin until they can get promoted and join Konoha's main military force. It works pretty well, all said and done. They aren't neglected here after all. How much time do they train a day? Sakura asked in curiosity. It was one thing to know about it from class, but another entirely to see it. Training Ground 1 was walled off from the rest of the village, so there wasn't really any reason to enter unless she had business there. Admittedly, most of her previous youth had been spent stalking a revenge-obsessed emo boy. About half of their day is spent here, Kurosaki said. Like I said, they aren't neglected, but if you're going to take care of a bunch of people you may as well get your money's worth. Kurosaki, you've become so good at explaining things, Kakashi said blithely, giving the man another eye smile. At this rate I'll have nothing to teach them by the time we leave. You guys must have terrible luck, getting this guy as a sensei, Kurosaki said to the three genin, ignoring the one-eyed man. He's just gotten worse since we were kids if you ask me. At least back then he was kind of serious. I don't know, he's only kind of late and reads porn all the time, said Sakura after some thought. Honestly, the thought of having someone other than the white-haired Jonin as their sensei was a sad one. Kakashi, who had already taken out his Ika, simply smiled and put a hand on her head, rubbing it absently. Of course, this had the effect of completely messing up her hair. "Sensei," she whined, producing a brush from seemingly nowhere and attacking her hair with it immediately. Okay, so having near waist-length hair again had brought around a sense of vanity once more. At least she was more than skilled enough to prevent from it being used as a weapon against her. Though she suspected that just might be a holdover from her 12-year-old self that she'd seemingly merged with. Did she mention how much that part of her sucked recently? It really sucked. Having half your impulses driven by inane preteen nonsense in the beginnings of puberty was positively maddening. Not to mention the whole boys thing. Did she mention boys yet? Ugh. Sure, kid, Kurosaki said with a smirk. Anyway, that's about it for this place. Any questions? Are you strong? Asked Naruto curiously. Is water wet? Can we not do the mission and fight you instead? He continued. Sasuke gave the blonde a look before considering the Jonin before them. Sakura was just shaking her head in exasperation. This happened way too much in all honesty. Oh. Suddenly there was a burst of incredibly dense chakra from directly in front of them. It crashed over them like a full lake of water. Kurosaki was now looking at them with interest, his expression settled into a toothy grin. Well, I'll suppose I can spare a few seconds. Every moment is a teachable one, apparently. And suddenly his arms were out, each hand catching the wrist of Sasuke and Naruto, who had attempted to drive kunai into his left kidney and right lung respectively, stopping the attacks just short of their marks. His head ducked forwards as Sakura's kunai barely missed the back of his head, the girl following shortly after. The second move was just as quick as the first. Naruto and Sasuke had their own weapons used to block the second attacks being made with their other hands. Sakura, however, had slightly more luck than her teammates. Her mid-air roundhouse kick had been dodged as well, but it seemed Kurosaki hadn't anticipated there being a knife tip extending from the top of her shoe. The resulting contact across his left cheek drew a bright line that left all who were watching stunned. Freed, the three genin regrouped to see the Jonin hadn't moved from his position after being hit. However, instead of blood they saw blue flickering flames dancing along the point of contact in a thin line. Chakra? Sakura said in surprise. Yo! Kakashi! Kurosaki straightened and ran a thumb along the score. When he lowered his hand, the chakra was gone, not a single indication he'd been hit remaining. What lottery did you win to get these three? I must have been a great person in a past life, I guess, he said with a shrug. No, you weren't, the three simultaneously thought. Want a trade? Pass. Honestly, Kurosaki, are you trying to scare them to death? Kakashi asked, absently thumbing a page of his book. Kurosaki looked from him to the three serious-looking genin and back before Kakashi lifted a finger to point over the man's shoulder. Nearly all of the trainees were shivering on the spot, frozen in place. The ones closest certainly were getting the worst of it. Oops. My bad, guys. He let the chakra go with an awkward chuckle. Carry on then. Most of the trainees collapsed to the ground with various levels of groaning. Chakra freaks. Kakashi muttered, turning another page. No offense, Naruto. None taken, sensei, the blonde returned after a second. Maybe you three won't be so bad for this after all, Kurosaki said with a grin, looking between the genin. Come see me after you finish your job here. With that he continued to lead them to the very back of the field before flickering out of sight. Looking at the place he'd been standing in last, Sakura asked, Sensei, what's his full name? He just goes by Kurosaki, their sensei answered with a shrug. We're not allowed to talk about it. Sasuke just shook his head. Whatever, let's get to work. You've got to be kidding me. Of the 30 or so genin who were there to work with Team 7, one was pointing directly to Naruto with a dull expression. You actually got on a team? How the hell does my life suck so much? Oh, didn't see you there, said Naruto in surprise. Hey Taki. It's Kakashi. My bad. Naruto scratched a whiskered cheek. Turning away from the despairing ninja to the chunin of the group, he continued, anyway, we're Team 7. Sasuke? Here, he said, holding out the mission scroll. Thanks for coming, the chunin said with a nod, taking it and putting it in his pocket. Let me explain to you what's going to happen while you're here. These genin, he jerked his thumb at the assembled group, have been recently promoted and are soon going to be put into squads of 3 like you already are. However, they'll need to show they are ready for that to happen, and one aspect of that is showing they can operate successfully on a team in different situations. Makes sense, Sakura said with a nod. She pointed at the amassed group of new genin. Did you want us to fight them all? No, we want them to watch you in action and reflect on what they're seeing. Your team will need to recover a package from a facility. The 3 members of Team 7 traded surprised looks. Do you think Iruka-sensei knew that before he gave us the mission? Naruto posed. Not likely. Sasuke gave the chunin a satisfied grin. When do we get started? The Uchiha caught a scroll that was suddenly thrown at him. Now. Genin, report to the viewing room. One last thing, Team 7. As the group hustled away, the chunin regrade them impassively. Don't destroy any cameras you find. That is how we will be watching your progress. Everything else is fair game. And with that the chunin vanished in a swirl of leaves. Hataki-san, shouldn't you be out there with them? Kakashi looked up from his book. One of the genin from the viewing group was giving him a curious look, mirrored by those around her. Why do you ask? Well, as the sensei of Team 7, wouldn't you help guide them for missions? She continued. We would be working with our chunin captain in the same situation. Well, to be honest, they told me I could relax up here. They're such great kids, he said with an eye smile. What he means is that they don't need him in the slightest. The genin strained to attention at the sound of the new voice. Kurosaki Taishu. Relax, kids, just here to watch, said the jonin, waving their salutes away with a hand. He looked up at the large screen against the far wall, split into dozens of smaller sections for each security camera. We recording this? Of course, Taicho, said one of the chunin posted at the station. Good, this should be entertaining. Kakashi's book snapped shut, drawing all eyes to him. What did you do? His question was directed at the orange-haired jonin. Kurosaki just grinned. I made this worth their time. Team 7 sat in relative ease a few hundred meters from the group of buildings they knew their objective was located in. There was no time limit, and this was a first for the team in general. At least as far as any of them thought. Read the objective one more time, Sakura, Sasuke said, eyes still fixed on the buildings. The fire daimyo's daughter has been kidnapped by a force of unknown size and affiliation. Unpayable ransom has been demanded. Primary objective is to recover the VIP and extract her. Secondary objective is to gain intel on the group upon retreat or optionally crush them. We are free to act as we see fit, she finished. Failure if the VIP is killed. I know I'm usually fired up about this kind of stuff, but would a team of genin ever get this kind of a mission? Naruto asked, already knowing exactly what the answer to his question was. Definitely not, Sasuke said, shaking his head. This stinks. The daimyo's daughter? Derank my ass. I agree. I know we told Kakashi-sensei to go, but we could have used him, Sakura said with a long breath. Why couldn't they just get a regular C-rank mission like normal advanced genin teams? Where was her wave mission, damn it? Doesn't matter. Naruto, there are going to be times that we'll need to do stuff without him. Is there a description of the target? Sakura showed them both a detailed color sketch of an attractive young woman with long hair in a kimono. Not the prettiest princess I've seen, but still cute, Naruto mused. There are a number of problems we have facing us, she said as the two memorized her appearance. We don't know where she is, how many we face, what their abilities are, or anything about the buildings. We'll have to assume they'll kill her if there's no way out for them. We need to get some intel first. We should draw them out, Sasuke proposed. Pull their attention in one direction while we get the target from another. He turned to Naruto. How many clones can you comfortably make? 3 words, one-man army. Should we do that though? Sakura asked. It'll definitely get a response, but it'll put them on guard if they feel threatened. The Uchiha frowned, looking between his two teammates. His gaze stopped on Naruto, who just waited patiently for once. What would the Naruto he grew up with do in this situation? Actually, I've got an even better idea. He pulled in the other two and whispered rapidly. You won't. Naruto was looking at Sasuke with wide eyes. I'm the least suited to this mission, so I'm the obvious choice, he said with a shrug. I'll leave her to you. You can count on us, Sakura said with a nod. Let's clear this mission. All right. Team 7, move out. The 3 vanished. Man, where the hell are they? It's been nearly 30 minutes already, did they just give up? Come on, you know that wouldn't happen. I keep thinking I see something, but it's the captive just playing with her hair. Doesn't anyone else think this mission is a bit above genin level? Kakashi yawned, his eye making the same circuit of screens for the 600th time. His team was nowhere to be found, which meant they'd either spent quite a while planning their operation, or were still preparing yet. And of course. He looked over at the only other jonin in the room. Kurosaki was still watching the screens in patience. Kakashi certainly was not happy that he'd messed with their mission just because the kids had potential. Not was he blind to what was on the screens. A captive? Dozens of ninja, many of who he recognized as chunin and even some jonin? He knew they stood virtually no chance of successfully completing this objective. What was Kurosaki's real aim? There's something at the front of the building. All eyes were drawn to the main monitor, which zoomed into the line figure who approached at a steady walk. It was not, as they expected, one of the 3 genin from Team 7. It was a samurai. Wearing simple but distinctive gear, the samurai moved closer across the wide open space that faced the front of the building. Through the other cameras the viewers could see the ninja that controlled the building were repositioning rapidly to his presence. Eventually he stopped, a couple dozen or so meters from the front door where they could get a good look at his face. Damn. He's hot. The words, spoken by the genin who had questioned Kakashi earlier, drew 2 general responses from the group. Agreement from the girls, and annoyance from the boys, though some admitted he looked cool. Kakashi only just prevented himself from rolling his eye. Bandits. The samurai's voice rang out clearly through the speakers, deep and confident. I have journeyed through many lands to stand at your door. Slain many foes to bring you to your end. For I am a hero. Is this guy serious? I am Kenjiro Masame, and for the love of the princess. He drew his sword with a ring of steel in the air. I will save her. A samurai? Fujita Okada looked up from his desk in surprise. Since being placed in command of the unknown force for this exercise, the jonin had assumed he would be facing something fairly significant, an ANBU in training perhaps, or a couple squads of chunin and jonin. After all, why else would he have been assigned 1 jonin and 20 chunin in total? Still. Yes, Captain. A lone samurai of unknown affiliation is standing at the front of the compound, Fujita narrowed his eyes. Spit it out, Yoko. The woman cleared her throat briefly. Sorry, sir, he's just acting the hero, demanding we face him in combat. He's here to save the princess, and win her heart. She clearly looked more confused than anything. Obviously this didn't fit any kind of training exercise they'd done before. The Jonin held himself from rolling his eyes, but only just. Are we sure he is alone? Scouts report he is alone, she replied. Should I signal to engage? Yes, send a squad and have another on standby to assist. Fujita stood with a small groan, working the kinks out of his back. Playing the commander was so boring, even border patrol was preferable in his opinion. Don't give me that look. We do not underestimate our opponents. Even a single casualty is unacceptable. Understood. Yoko paused for a moment as her professional demeanor slipped and she gave her longtime friend a curious look. Going somewhere, Fuji? To watch, where else? How often do you run into samurai, even crazy ones? This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. He's gonna get murdered. Come on, have you ever seen a samurai fight? I thought we were supposed to be watching that genin team though. Unless that it's one of them? In a henge? No way, that's suicide. There's a ton of chunin in there. Well, they've got a better chance than we would at least. It's Sasuke. Kakashi watched the samurai intently, though his search for the other two members of his squad was also much more focused. There was little doubt of it being the Uchiha. He had the most versatility in close combat as well as a still yet to be confirmed skill with swords. An unlocked Sharingan. He was Itachi's brother after all. Movement in the base was sporadic, but with all the monitors it was very clear that more than half of the milling ninja had now shifted to the front half of the building they were in, many watching the grounds beyond through windows, joking and laughing. Clearly they shared the same opinion as the audience of genin. Deception. Complacency. These were weapons that even the most seasoned veterans were wise to be wary of. It was why they did these types of drills so much. They'd played their cards well so far. How would his students capitalize on the opportunity presented to them? Ow! Naruto quietly nursed the sandal-shaped mark that was slowly fading from his face. Using an earth jutsu to get into the building was an excellent idea, and Sakura's claim that she'd be able to do it was one that the Jinchuriki didn't question. Indeed, she was far better at moving beneath the ground than he was. But she was also wearing a dress and he definitely got an eyeful of the skin-tight shorts she wore underneath. Right before she caught him in the face with a reflexive kick. Sakura's flustered face was barely visible in the low light they had, but the finger she was pointing upward was more than clear. Here, she signed, unable to speak properly given their situation. Small room above. Enemy unknown. Understood. Go. They surfaced into what looked like a small storage closet, dust from the destroyed concrete of the floor clouding around them and indicating the room had no air movement within to speak of. Sakura pressed herself against the wall to allow Naruto space to surface properly, thankful to be breathing properly once more. Without a sound they pulled the door open and peeked out. The hall was deserted, but that could change at any moment. Naruto quickly formed 4 clones and sent them to scout, henging into typical chunin from the village on the off chance someone glimpsed them. The orange really was a dead giveaway here. Looks like phase 1 of our plan is going well, Naruto mused, getting feedback from scouting clones. The halls are pretty empty and I think I know where our target is. Already? Sakura whispered in surprise. The building is way smaller than it looks and there's only one door with a guard. The distraction is working well. What about escape routes? Remember we can't take the VIP underground. There's a decent window on the 2nd floor in the back that should work. As long as Sasuke can keep the outside scouts looking at him we should be fine. Satisfied, Sakura nodded. Alright then. Let's get this done. She followed Naruto at some distance as he led her to the location of their target. The room was guarded by a single person. The Chunin tensed initially but relaxed at the sight of one of his comrades dashing over. "We need to move the prisoner, we've been compromised," the man said, eyes moving to the far end of the hall. "Already? How many are there?" said the guard quickly, a kunai easily finding its way into his hand. "Just 2, came a voice to his side. He turned to glimpse another Chunin before his world went black. "That was risky," Naruto said with a frown, now searching the sleeping guard for a key. What if he'd been startled? "Sorry, we need to speed this up," said Sakura, ensuring the effect of her genjutsu before lowering her hands. "Sasuke is in a lot of danger and they could come check on their hostage at any time." Within seconds they were inside the room, the door snapping shut behind them, unconscious Chunin hidden in the corner while a henged clone took his place outside. By the back wall sat the woman from their mission scroll, unharmed and all in all looking bored, a look that changed as she took in her unexpected guests. She wasn't bound and had a book held loosely in her hand. Dropping their henge seemed to snap her into reality. "So young. Are you the force my father sent?" she asked, getting to her feet. The kimono she wore spoke of obvious wealth, as did the obi that held it together. "We're here to rescue you," Naruto said at once while Sakura moved close, ready to use a genjutsu to put her to sleep. "Don't worry, you can count on us to get you home safe." "But how will you be able to do that?" the woman continued, eyes moving between the genin. "It is impressive you made it on here but they will not simply let you walk out with me." Naruto caught her as she fell into unconsciousness, thanks to Sakura's genjutsu. "Whoa, this isn't a costume, her kimono must cost a fortune," he mused, feeling the quality of the threads. "Think they'd give us bonus points for keeping it clean?" He cleared his throat at the look Sakura was giving him. "I mean, ready for phase 2? Sakura pulled a small rectangle of paper from her pouch and gave it a slight wiggle. "Ready when you are. Keep him surrounded. He will fade with time." "How very like this shinobi scum, both without honor or skill," the samurai said snidely, brandishing his katana with a flourish. Sasuke was, in all honesty, having a fantastic time. His long hair whipped around his face as he dodged. Another attack meant to skewer him from the side. As with all the attacks he did so with the grace and eloquence of a dancer at a performance. The Sharingan truly was unfair, particularly when his opponents had no idea he was using it beneath his henge. However, his main advantage over the Chunin he faced was that none of them were very experienced with this matchup. There was no doubt that many of the Chunin had faced sword users before, but years had passed since Konoha faced legitimate threat from either Kiri or Kyumo, where swordsmanship could be found in a fair percent of the shinobi roster. Without a dedicated weapon user, these Chunin would need to work quite a bit harder to back him into a corner. A sudden explosion from an upper floor caused them all to pause, sparing an instant of a glance to the falling rubble and the figures that followed it. 2 shinobi in black and porcelain masks retreated swiftly from the building, a brightly colored figure draped over the shoulder of the one in front. They both hit the ground smoothly and dashed off into the forest. A nanosecond later every Chunin on the ground with him had begun pursuit in earnest, leaving him suddenly very much alone. He made to take a step only to jump back, avoiding being impaled by a brace of kunai. A lone man landed lightly on the ground, one hand at his left ear. "Make sure you get her back, Yoko." "Yes, I will hold him here." Sasuke recognized the detached indifference almost immediately. His new opponent was a jonin, likely the commander of the group, and he would undoubtedly not be happy that he'd just been played like a fiddle by a few genin. This meant it was time to get his Uchiha ass out of there. "Finally you face me, villain," he said in his very best movie voice. "I will give you one last chance to release the Lightning Daimyo's daughter." "Are you a moron?" the jonin said tiredly, rubbing his forehead. "Some other group literally just took her. And she's the Fire Daimyo's daughter." It matters not, hang on the fire daimyo's daughter? The sudden change in tone was rather jarring. Not the lightning daimyo's daughter? No. Fire. Oh. Sasuke blinked a few times before sheathing his sword. The look the Jonin was giving him was indescribable. Well, this is awkward. Sorry about that. I got the wrong woman. Good luck getting her back. And with that he walked off, mumbling to himself about where he got lost. Meanwhile the Jonin simply heaved a long sigh, receiving word over his comm that both the group had been decoys, and from command that they'd been beaten in the exercise. In some ways he couldn't help but be grateful. The Chunin hopefully learned a lesson about complacency, and command learned a lesson about giving him such a pain in the ass assignment when he was in between missions. Well done, you three. Kakashi beamed at his 3 genin from just above a barbecue menu. He'd taken them to a fairly well-known one as a reward for doing so. Well, on the fly. I'm surprised it worked so well, Sakura admitted. Privately she found herself reassessing just how skilled Sasuke was. She remembered singing his praises constantly as a girl, but in all honesty he literally was that good. They were caught off guard, the dark-haired boy said with a shrug. I did what I had to keep them off balance, and it kept me from getting hurt. I would have retreated if needed. They wouldn't let me keep a recording, Naruto pouted sullenly. I even offered to pay them. With what money? Sakura quipped, much to Naruto's chagrin. Guess you'll have to wait until next time, Sasuke said with a shrug, inwardly pleased his friend didn't have on-demand access to his performance. Regardless, that had to net us some positive reputation. How about some C ranks, Kakashi-sensei? Preferably something out of the village, Sakura said immediately. I want to travel. Same here. Sure, I think we can handle it, Kakashi agreed. But it'll have to happen when I get back. I've taken a mission for the next couple weeks and you'll be on your own in the meantime. Oh yeah, well in that case, what do you mean you're going to be gone for a couple weeks? The 3 genin shouted, drawing the attention of the entire restaurant. Sorry, Sakura apologized, pulling her teammates down with her. Sensei, she whined, dragging the word out. You volunteered? Would you believe me if I said you 3 have motivated me to be better? No, they chorused. You didn't have to say it so quickly, Kakashi deadpanned. Anyway, that's just how it is. I'll be out of the village for about 2 weeks, maybe a bit longer, so enjoy the time off from missions while I'm gone. Use the time to work individually on the things we've talked about during training. How did they even let you take it? I thought Jonin senseis weren't given missions when they had a genin squad, Naruto pointed out, getting nods out of the other 2. I'm uniquely suited for the job, the man said unhelpfully. Can you at least tell us what the mission is about? Sakura asked, baffled as to what it could be. Well, Kakashi scratched his cheek before shrugging. The next Chunin exams are going to be hosted by our village in a couple months, and it's something to help prepare for that. The Jonin raised his eyebrows as all 3 of his charges became thoughtful, almost as if they'd been pulled somewhere else by his words. Oh. It was Naruto who said it, but it served to bring the trio back to the conversation. And we don't have to do missions while you're gone? Sasuke asked. You've completed more D-rank missions in 2 weeks than most genin teams do in 2 months. Take this time to train hard and practice your own interests. Maybe when I get back you'll be able to show me something neat. I might have something for you too, depending on the effort I see. The 3 nodded. It wouldn't be maybe. And so this was how the 3 members of Team 7 found themselves the next day, sitting under a tree at Training Ground 3 and not really sure what to do. So, what should we do? Asked Naruto after a few seconds. I know he said we didn't have to, but wanna get a mission anyway? The other 2 looked at one another before shrugging, following the blonde back toward the village proper. Naruto sighed as he dropped onto his couch. They'd done a mission. 3 of them, actually. They took turns leading just to change things up. It just felt so normal to be busy now that downtime was weird. And now they had a week of it. 2. They'd unanimously agreed to just do their own thing until Kakashi returned, but that was it. Well, it's not like I don't have problems to work out, he mused, staring at the ceiling. Indeed, there was a ton of stuff to do. Namely, there were a lot of people he'd helped in his previous life that weren't helped yet. Many of them were suffering greatly at that very moment. Living in fear, living alone, waiting for the end of the world, running from their past. It went on and on. Naruto wanted to be everywhere at once, helping all of his friends live better lives. The frustrating part was that he could only do so much. Sure, he could technically be everywhere at once, but he wasn't exactly strong enough to do it safely. Not meshed with his 12-year-old self the way he currently was. Not with Kurama still caged the way he was. And not with the fact that none of those people even knew who he was in the first place. The thought that they simply didn't care yet was a deeply uncomfortable one. Fortunately, if things were anything like they were before, he still had time before many of those situations passed the point of no return. But still he needed to think, he needed to plan, and most importantly he needed to act. He needed to get stronger. 2 weeks was quite a bit of free time to suddenly have. Sasuke frowned as he absently threw shuriken at various targets across the room from a prone position on his bed as he considered the problems that would eventually seek him out. There was Itachi, Orochimaru, and Akatsuki to name a few, but on reflection there was so much detail that simply wasn't important at the time and seemed so much more relevant on a second look.